hold a job.
Apparently. Is there one area of the business world that you've enjoyed more than others? And is there a type of leadership that you found, you talked about servant leadership, but that you found more successful in one tactic, that you found more successful in certain fields over others at all?
I will tell you, it's a more astute question than I think you realize. There's I call it a tool called a Berkman. Have you guys heard of a Berkman? Sorry, my voice cracked. So it sort of analyzes your leadership styles and analyzes leadership styles under which you work best, that sort of thing. When I took my Berkman, the lady was amazed. I have them all. And I use them all in different situations. So I think versatility is very important. You know, if this room was on fire, being a servant leader is not what I need to be doing. Hey guys, what do you think? Should we go on for a while? Or, no. It's like, I see there's a fire. Who's going to call 911? Where shall we all rendezvous to make sure we all got out? That would be a leader, but it's like, we're doing something now. We're not voting, etc. So I would say that having the flexibility to utilize different styles in different situations, I think is extremely important. But to use them well, you have to exercise that muscle. And that means learning how to use each of them in a way that achieves your goal. Because I could suddenly be on the podium and be a little more command and control-ish. That wouldn't be a successful form of command and control. So I've found, with my personality and people's experiences with me, how to behave in different situations in a way that still allows people to know I'm a leader. Sometimes as a leader, I'm in the back of the room and I'm letting somebody else run the meeting. Because it's most important for that person to get the, whatever the benefit of the experience or maybe the exposure. But I'm there to support them. And I stand up at the right time when they're losing control and I help them get control and I see back down. So it's, that's one of those things where you just have to try things and watch and learn, right? Watch other people. You've seen people do it poorly. Don't do it that way. Smile. That was a joke. I guess if my voice wasn't breaking, people would get the jokes. But when you see somebody that you sort of naturally gravitate toward, figure out what they're doing differently than other people. What is it? Do they stand differently? Do they use different words? What is it about them? And then practice that. It may feel funny, it may feel like you're acting. And maybe at first you are acting to some degree, you're trying to do something. But once you sort of learn your own rhythm, it won't be an act anymore. It'll be real. I answered one of your questions, I think.
It was like, was there a certain sector of business that
I really liked?
You really liked?
Yeah. I would tell you, maybe because I started there, I love operations. I like wearing this more than my heart. But long ago, I left operations from the standpoint of I don't have the technical skills. I have a lot of experience, so there's things that I can see that maybe a new guy won't see, but I can't design a distillation column. They didn't have computer programs to do it when I was your age, so we did it in a much different way. But my heart, I think, will always still be there. And I know that when I'm working with firms, I'm much more interested in operationally how to optimize what they're doing than reviewing the financials, which I'm perfectly comfortable doing, but there's a reason I'm not an accountant. It's a necessary evil. It's not what I live for. So for me, and everybody's different. Everybody's very different. And again, the more you move up, the more you have to balance and know what your strengths are and know what your weaknesses are, and make sure you put people around you that are strong in the things that you're weak. So my operations controller, the guy that put the numbers together every month, I made sure he was passionate about that. Because he would bring me things and get me excited about looking at them. Otherwise, it'd be Wednesday afternoon, I'd have a Friday phone call, and I'd be in there late Wednesday going, well, I gotta look at it now, I'm running out of time, And because I don't have the passion for the numbers, it was a chore for me. So find people who are passionate about the things that you aren't. Yeah?
So you talked about taking a lot of risks. So I was wondering if you could kind of describe your approach to the risks that you took and any advice you have for taking risks in your careers, for example, whether you considered backup plans or anything when you were making leaps between.
Right. All of my risks were calculated risks. So there was a point, my facility on the ship channel was a joint venture, and I started with DuPont, which at that time was a cradle-to-grave company. If you went to work for DuPont, you would work for DuPont for 40 years and then retire from DuPont. And even DuPont doesn't do that anymore. But when the joint venture partner decided to buy out DuPont, they gave some of us a choice. We could stay with the facility or DuPont would take us. That wasn't an obvious answer. So I, literally got the piece of paper out and did the Ben Franklin, the pluses and minuses thing. And found out later my husband had done the same thing. We both went to the same plan. And we were both going, well, I have my answer. What's your answer? No, you should me first. Because we both said we wanted to stay with the plan. And that was not the first answer we thought we should come up with. So I would say each time I took a risk, I was looking at the downside, what's the worst case scenario, and how do I recover from that? I was looking at the upside, so what's the potential? And in each case, I was at a point where I felt like the experiences I had. So when I left, what was at that time, Quantum, to go to Liquide, I was probably looking for about a year and a half, sort of quietly on the side. And I interviewed about 4 times with other companies, but I never really found the one, right? When I found your Liquide, I knew I'd found the one. And I think they knew that about me too, because they called and offered me a job that wasn't the one I interviewed for. Which made me want to go back and interview again, because I needed to learn about this thing called sales, because I'd never done sales before. But I, in my head, in that case, decided it was like purchasing only wrong side out, right? You're just sitting on the other side of the table. And I started to think about the people I had bought from and how much I respected some of them. Some of them I did not, and I didn't buy from those. So I tried to understand how I might apply some of the lessons I've learned in this job to do this one. So I would always decide whether I thought I could be successful in the next job. And if I weren't successful, what my fallback plan was. What would I do after that? So I think it was a very intellectual decision in each case. Sleepless nights, because those aren't easy decisions to make. And I'm not a huge, I didn't just throw everything away and say we're going to sell the house and go live on an island somewhere. It wasn't that risky. But in each case, I made sure that I had talked to people I trusted to understand whether I was analyzing the pluses and minuses properly. Most of them were joint decisions with my husband, because we were making a decision for the family. There were some decisions I made that weren't my decision, it was my husband's. I will give you the example of, I worked for an international company. My husband did not want to move out of the United States. So I had to forego opportunities to move internationally when people at my level are expected to move internationally for that firm. And that's eventually why I left Liquide. I couldn't go anywhere else within the firm without having had an international assignment. So I knew I needed to go do something else. So in that case, that was the best decision for my family. It wasn't the best decision for my career, but I knew when we made it, and we made it in the mid-90s, because I knew my husband, that was okay. I knew what it meant, and I was okay with the results of that decision. That's very, very important. You can't, as a family, not be okay with where you're going as a family. It's critically important. Yeah.
You spoke earlier about how women in the past have tried too hard to become like one of the guys in order to get ahead. So I was wondering what some of the things you've done are some of your strategies for how to have guys respect you but not, feel the need to emulate them or become the guys.
I think for me, maybe I'll go back. Do you all know Kathleen Parker? She used to write for Newsweek. I think she writes for Washington Post, I think now. And every once in a while she's got articles in the Chronicle. And she actually wrote, and I love, I think I have it. I brought some things that I think I have. I do. I'm going to quote this for you. So she wrote this in a Newsweek column in 2011. And she said, "We were trying not just to be as good as men, but to be men. I have the neckties to prove it." And by the way, I've still got a drawer full. I don't know why I kept them, but I've still got a drawer full of neckties. I love this. "It turns out that women make lousy men, a fact for which we should be grateful rather than apologetic. As a group, we are worse at some things, but better at others. The very others, it also turns out, that happen to be driving today's economy and that of the future." And when I read that, I almost cheered. It was like, I could have written that if I was as good a writer as Kathleen Parker. I think part of it was, in the early 80s when I got out of school and started work, there weren't many women. I never had a woman ahead of me I was watching. And it became evident in the early 2000s when this great cheer went up when I got moved to run the pipeline. All these women in Air Liquide were watching me, and I had no idea, because I never watched another woman or worried about what other women were doing. I was worried about me. But you guys have the luxury of having women in enough numbers ahead of you that you can watch and you can emulate. Back in these early 80s, the only people we had to watch were men. So I probably was not comfortable in my own skin. I only knew what I learned in a book. I hadn't learned the real world yet. And so the only people I could emulate were the guys that I saw that were successful. Eventually, I think at the end of the day, I got comfortable in my own skin. And I would encourage you all, I see my daughter who's your age. I think she's just, in essence, more comfortable in her own skin to begin with. It's just the day and age. You guys are a lot more comfortable with who you are. God bless you. But as you take on new assignments, the faster you can get comfortable in your own skin. And that means being willing to say, "I've never seen this before. Do you mind coming over here and showing me why we would have prepared this way instead of this other way?" Whatever, right? Why we decided to put that here on the balance sheet instead of here on the balance sheet. Whatever the question is. Questions are opportunities for you to see insight. Sometimes they're opportunities for the other person to go, "That's a really good question. We could put it up there. I wish we would have thought of putting it up there," right? So, in answer to your question, I think the opportunity to find other women that you can talk to, network with, and be mentors to, as well as a mentee of, and getting comfortable with who you are and knowing what your strengths are and using those to your advantage. And these are business strengths, not the fact that you look really good in high heels. Okay? That doesn't take you very far, believe me. But take those business strengths and find opportunities, create opportunities to use those strengths. And create and find opportunities to build new strengths. Those things you don't know anything about, volunteer to be on that team. You can at least be arms and legs and learn something. And maybe the next time there's a group on that, you get to lead it because you're experienced. So it may sound like a bit of a cop-out, but I think you're starting from a bit of a different position. And we don't all have to be alike. Even boards of publicly traded companies have figured out, I love this quote, if they're all male, pale, and stale, they're not going to get a variety of ideas discussed at the table. And you don't need a public company board that is there to challenge the CEO and the other leadership of the company to think about things in new ways. You don't need them all in lockstep. It's not good. You want a variety of ideas brought. And that means people from different backgrounds, people with different degrees, people with different experiences. And, frankly, women and men, in many cases, look at things differently than each other. Our approaches are different. So it's a good thing. There are a lot of boards that haven't embraced that as much as others. I think too many are trying to fill a quota, which I think is also bad for women. It means they're putting women on boards that have no business being on the board sometimes. There are other women that are brilliant and should be on boards and aren't being considered because they're unknown. And a lot of getting on a board is who you know. So it's that need to network again, that need to be out there and making contacts. So go be yourself.